Hi, guys. This is very last minute. So hopefully people get notifications. Let me send this to some people so they know I'm live. What's up, Isaac? You were notified? That's good to know. It's been so long since I've been live, I didn't figure I'd push it out. Y'all hear my kids, just ignore them, okay? Donna Clark! It took BK to bring me back. I told y'all I'd cover it. I'm not happy about them offering this plea deal right before they go to court, but we're going to watch it together. How do y'all feel about it? Donna, how do you feel? We've been so busy this summer, I've hardly been even on YouTube, to be honest. Between the kids, all three of the girls in cheerleading and just trying to enjoy the weather while it's not storming. What do you need, babe? Brooklyn's not down. We've been outside and at cheerleading most of the summer. My kids are looking for me. Or looking for Brooklyn. She's probably hiding in her bedroom. Let me share this. I'll watch part of this while we wait for the trial to start. If it's gonna work. Xander was my granddad's friend. My heart breaks. Oh my gosh, Donna, I forgot about that. Hey, Britt. Oh, y'all can't even see this.
Get a conviction in court, and I think we're going to see these kinds of arguments
I'm a little rusty. I haven't been live
across the country for some time, and the evidence, the science is simply going to get better and better. And so these are questions that courts that are probably going to weigh heavy on courts.
I haven't cut my computer on in so long. Everything's just like freaking out. So
Andre, again, appreciate that. If you're looking at the clock now, it is 11:30
I think they're only
13.
offering him this
So
deal because they
hearing was
screwed up
scheduled
so
to
bad in the
start 13
beginning.
minutes ago. We have heard they've
Maybe.
started bringing the media in, so we are getting closer to that hearing actually
It's just crazy
started.
to me
And
that
again,
if he's
trying to focus on
stood
the victims
silent
as
and
much as we can.
pretty much pled
Four
not
wonderful
guilty
young
in the
people there at the
beginning
University of Idaho.
for
Their
2.5
lives really
years.
just
It's almost
starting.
been 3
Madison
years.
Logan, Kaylee Gonsalves,
Why
Ethan
would he
Chapin,
take this plea deal
Xana
if he didn't
Kernodle.
do
Maggie,
it?
you talked about sort of the heinous nature of the crimes, the multiple stabbings, and that's why the Latah County prosecutors initially seeking the death penalty in that case. That would be off the table
Can
if
y'all
this
hear
plea
this
deal
okay?
is
Hopefully you can.
accepted. And again, speaking of the heinous nature of these crimes, as you talked about, Maggie, it was weeks before they caught and arrested who police and prosecutors say is the person who did this. Weeks that community of
Donna,
Moscow,
yeah.
Idaho, even
Humble
really the
apple
whole
crumble,
state
hi.
was wondering where is this person or people that had stabbed to death 4 young people at the University of Idaho. It was a tenuous, flat out scary time.
It was.
For a lot of
I
people.
hope y'all are doing
It
good.
really was. And it looks
He
like
is a
that
coward,
hearing
Donna.
is about to begin. So let's go to the courtroom.
I hope. Well, from my understanding, he actually has to talk. Let me make this bigger. So we'll hear him talk for the first time. I don't know about y'all, but I don't really care to see the comments. I'm gonna put KTV or this channel's link in here too, just in case. Thank you, Legs.
All right, this is CR 0124316665. Defendant is present in custody with counsel, Ms. Thompson, Ms. Jennings.
I guess I could probably turn a
pardon me,
light on so y'all could
Taylor,
see
Ms.
me, huh?
Massoff, and Ms. Barlow. The state's present with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Horowitz, Ms. Jennings,
Oh shit, sorry.
and
Y'all can step over. Is it plug?
Mr. Nye is here as well. Am I miss anybody?
Ms. Allen is here as well.
Ms.
Your
Allen
Honor.
is here as well. Very well, thank you. All right, we are here today to entertain a change of plea. Before I start, I want to address some issues
I wonder if the
of
judge will
concern, and
accept this.
otherwise,
Because he doesn't seem to be
first,
playing around.
I
I'm sorry for
appreciate
all the noise
everybody
too.
in attendance today being on their best behavior. Please, no outbursts or demonstrations. Any such conduct will result in immediate removal
See if I
and
can
may
make
result in an inability to attend further
this
court
bigger.
proceedings
Ha.
in this case.
We can see it better.
I want to point out that there have been calls by some for the public to contact me and my office in an attempt to influence my decision-making in this case.
Okay, Donna.
This has been extraordinarily disruptive for court staff and the ability for them to get work done, not only in this case, but in other cases where defendants are
Hey, Regina.
entitled to have their cases processed, and frankly, as important, if not more so, for victims to have their cases processed in those cases. It's also highly inappropriate. The court is not supposed to, and this court will never take into account
Oh my God, I know.
public
I
sentiment
haven't known what to watch today,
in
but I've told
making
everybody
an
for a
opinion
long time I'd cover
regarding
this, so here I
its
am.
judicial decisions in cases.
But I'm trying.
Court
JLR
should,
will tweet
and I
out
always will make decisions based
the
on where
Diddy
the
stuff,
facts
so I'll
and
just
the
keep up
law
with it that way.
lead me. Period. I have not read any of the numerous messages nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails that have been sent to me and my staff. Those have all been forwarded to security and, where appropriate, to law enforcement. I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this, because again, it is not appropriate and frankly not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers.
The way this is
Court's
set up
duties
makes it
are
look like it's saying I'm
and what the
Kohberger.
duties and the
Absolutely
rights
not.
of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including whether, as well as what penalties to ask for, and what penalties to pursue.
Yeah,
including the
Legs, I
death
remember
penalty.
talking to you about this case.
This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty. My role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met,
It's just
I can
crazy.
only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. If I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all of the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea. Finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families, including the victims' families, the families of the defendant, for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here.
I can't
I,
imagine
like,
what these families feel
most
with it
everyone else,
just
learned of
been so
this
quick like
plea
that.
agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July, with the questionnaire process in mid-July. It was,
They were
once I
so
learned
close to
of the
going to
defendant's
court.
decision to change his plea in this case, it was important that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this, getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror
Sorry if y'all hear my
questionnaires
kids running around upstairs.
prior to the beginning of the voir dire process. And so it was important that we, if we're going to go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or if for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified. And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may have not had the amount of time that we would otherwise allow for them to travel here. And so, again, I apologize for that. I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing.
Good Lord, my
Also,
family
when
is
we
loud out
finished
there.
the
I'm
hearing this
sorry, y'all.
morning, I asked the
I don't know if
public
y'all
and
can hear
media
them, but
wait in their
it's
seats
they're loud.
until the victims' families and the
Hey,
defendants'
Polly
families
Waffle.
and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and the Ada County 4th District Marshal Service for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom you, many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. I understand the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment, burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the
Crazy.
defendant stipulate, that is, that
It still
the
just blows my
defense is
mind that
not free
this
to
is
argue
happening
for a
right now.
lesser sentence at sentencing
Sorry if I'm
to
making
the
you
following.
drunk.
The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant on counts 2 through 5, the 4 counts of first-degree homicide, on each count would receive a fixed life sentence. All 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one
Mama
another.
Fee, how are you?
Defendant,
I
as
can't
part of
hear.
the plea
I was
agreement,
excited to
waives
do
his
the
right
court
to
hearings,
appeal,
but
as well as his right to appeal the sentence and
this
his
is all
right to
just
seek leniency
so
or
wild.
reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful
Matthew.
sentence at sentencing.
Shut
The
up.
stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count. So theoretically, the only thing
Hope
the
you're
court
feeling
could do
better.
would be a lesser sentence at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very well. All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with
This
him
lady is
his
set
rights,
for life as much
defenses,
as
and
she's
possible
made with your
consequences
help.
to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counter offers and answered his questions about those?
Yes,
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
Let
Mr.
Vanessa move
Kohberger,
on. No, he
I
makes
need
me
to ask you
sick.
some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. I do this to ensure that you understand.
hear him talk
I
for
am
the first
assured
time.
that you understand the nature of the charges to which
Kinda
I understand you're
freaky.
going to plead guilty, as well
Does
as the
that not
possible
creep you out? It
consequences
does
to
me
you
just a
of
little
your
bit.
guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily. And I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that? Yes. All right. Thank you.
Oh, he
Now,
sounds
while
like
you're
a
standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
He doesn't sound like what I expected him to sound like. I don't know what I thought he would sound like, but that wasn't it.
Yes. All right. And Mr. Kohberg, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated. All right.
I wonder how
Before I
his
start
family
asking you
feels,
questions
like-
today, have you consumed substantive questions? Let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or
Regina, thank you for
exercise
9 months.
reasonable judgment?
No.
You feel like you are thinking clearly today?
Yes.
All right. I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include, on count 1, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay
hope he
restitution
denies
to the
it.
victims of the crime.
I have mixed
count
emotions
2,
about what
3,
I
4,
want
and
them to
5
do
for
more
first
than
degree murder, the consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of incarceration of life imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be
so
potentially
he could
responsible for a
only
fine
go
of
in
up
there
to
for 40 years.
$5,000 to each of the
That's
victims
some
of your
bullshit.
crime, to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment, to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And
I
again,
hope
you
they
may be required
deny
to pay
it for
restitution to the
selfish
victims of
reasons because I want to see it go to court
you
and
would
hear everything that
be
they
required
have.
to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4,
But
and 5,
if they
a
take
DNA
it,
sample
then
and a right thumbprint
we
impression,
know he did it.
and potentially pay for analysis of those samples. You would lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yes.
Yes, sir, or something. Oh, Jesus. Clearly,
You've
I was
heard
raised in the
the
South.
plea
So yes,
agreement
there
that
would
I
have
talked
been
about today. Do you
no
agree with
other
that plea
option but
agreement?
to say that.
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with, that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As as I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Is anyone other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Hey, Brian, the
Has
gamer.
anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement?
I was gonna make a poll, but I
in order
can't
to
figure
get
out
you
how to
plead
do
guilty
it.
today?
No.
It's been too long since I've been on here.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
Lex, you think he will?
And counsel, obviously, there have been a number of motions filed.
I
to
have so
suppress
many
evidence
mixed
in this
emotions about
case.
this. I don't know if I
Um,
want them
Other
to
than
deny
those
it or
filed,
to
are there
just
any other
accept it. I don't know.
motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
Just looking for my glasses, but I don't know where they went.
And Mr. Kohberger, you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any
This
decision
judge
this
don't
court
take
made,
shit. I like him.
as well as your sentence.
Yes.
Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Donna, you
Yes.
hope they
Are you
don't,
pleading guilty
or you hope
freely
they
and
do.
voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
Thank you,
And are
Ryan.
the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
Oh my God, Donna, I know. I can't even imagine. You know, I was talking to
This
somebody
document outlines
yesterday
many
about
of the
how
rights that you have
I can
in
say what
this
I would do if
case.
I was in this situation, but until we were,
Should you not
if I
plead
were
guilty,
to
did you
ever be
understand
put
those
in this
rights?
situation,
Yes.
first they wouldn't
They
have to
include
have
a right
court
to a
because they'd
jury
just
trial.
put
Do you
me in
understand that?
prison. But
Yes.
They include a right to
you
the
only
presumption of
you
innocence.
can
Do you
only say
understand
what
that?
you would do
Yes.
until
They have the right to require
you're
the
in
state to
that
prove your
situation. You
guilt
know what I mean?
as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right.
This is intense. Like, I feel like I'm on pins and needles watching this.
So as to count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder.
Tom,
As to
I
count
have to agree
two,
to that 100%. Prison
The
justice,
state would have
for
had to
sure.
have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. As to count three, the state would have had to have proven
Oh, you got
that
that
on
gives me
that
the
same
chills.
date in
This is
Latah
awful.
County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count four, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count five, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
Oh my God. What a. Mm. This is awful. Like, I want to know everything that they had,
I wanna
everything they
also
found
make,
against him,
For the
what
record,
everybody had to say,
the
but at the
defendant
same
has,
time, like,
provided with the guilty plea
he's
advisory
admitting he
form,
did it.
a document entitled Written Factual Basis.
I'm
It
just a
purports to
nosy.
have the
You know
defendant's
what?
signature,
So I want to know
dated 1
everything,
July
but
2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
And did you agree
be
with the
safe,
written factual
Ryan.
basis that is included there?
Yes.
Um, And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully,
Don't ask me
unlawfully,
too.
deliberately,
I
and with
need to know why.
premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
Oh,
Did
and he
you, on or
said it
about
like
that
it's
same
not
date in Moscow,
a
Idaho,
sick bastard.
kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to provide its recitation of its factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This
Your Honor,
makes
the
me
organization
sick.
of the recitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence, as an overview, would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing at his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener.
Dawn on me too
Jumping
much. It
ahead,
makes my
the
stomach
end of
hurt.
June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence
Wow.
in Moscow, Idaho. Now,
Oh my
I will
God. So he
acknowledge to the
stalked
court and all
those
present that
girls
there are
and
many residences in that
Ethan
area.
for a
It's
long
dense
time.
population of mostly college-related occupants.
Oh, that
Between
bastard used the gift
July
card too, I
9th,
bet, so there was no
2022
trace of
and
his
November
debit
7th,
cards.
the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we
Jesus.
do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was the traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Bryan Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then move to the early
Y'all hear
morning
my kids
hours of
running?
November
I'm sorry.
13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m.
I did
and
not.
remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include a trial, video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled
That lady back
surveillance
there's got some
that the investigators
huge
put
hair.
together from businesses and residents.
What's
Defendant's
happening?
car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning.
Why is there
Comes
an
into
echo?
the
Do y'all hear
immediate
that?
area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. And approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped
You hear
at
it
the
too?
intersection
I don't know
of
what's
King and King
echoing. I think
Road,
it's
did a
just them.
U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that the defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the 1122 King
Mm.
Road residence. The state believes that its evidence would then show that
Yeah, I was
the
still
defendant
in high
entered
school when that
the
happened.
residence of 1122
I
through
had
the
never
kitchen
heard of that
sliding
one.
door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Kaylee Gonzalez. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath.
I wonder if
The
Olivia's
state's
in the
evidence would
courtroom.
show that Xana Knodel was still awake at this time. In fact,
Y'all know
had
she's
taken a
engaged to
DoorDash
one of
order
the
not long before this started. Her
to the
room was
brother
not
of
on the 3rd
Ethan.
floor, it was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were 2 other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those
Yes,
roommates
Regina.
awoke, looked out her door, not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black
Ooh, it gives
balaclava
me
on,
chills.
holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, the defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom would see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walinta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning.
Isn't it crazy how
Later
they can
that morning,
find all this stuff?
Still, this Sunday, the
It's
13th of
incredible how they
November of
can, to me.
2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. It's there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence.
That weirdo went to go
About
see the chaos he
9:30,
caused.
the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up.
Oh my God.
The defendant's phone then went to the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman. And the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there.
It's where he disposed of
In
everything.
addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined, on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 13th, 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders.
I bet
The
he
evidence
planned on doing
also
it
will
again. That's why he was
suggest
going to
that
order
there were
another
at
one.
least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these transactions had occurred.
Wow.
Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicles seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and returned to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Kohberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Logan's body in the bed.
Wow.
Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body at the crime scene.
Mm.
I can tell the court, in public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look to our own cars, you know, in those compartments in the doors. You can try to keep them clean where you put
Welcome
stuff.
back,
There's
Ryan.
always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill.
This
So,
guy
Your Honor,
thought
at
all
the
of his
end,
background with
the
school would
state
get
submits
him
the evidence that I've given just a quick
away with it.
overview
I
of,
think he truly thought
and
he'd
that
get
the
away with it
presenting
with all that
court would
background he has
conclude,
had.
which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Mr. Kohberger entered the residence of 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Manny Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. You guys, this is so unprofessional of me to just say right in the middle of this, but does that
All right.
attorney
Based on
not
the,
look
state's,
like
proffer and
a
importantly,
Santa
based
Claus
upon
you'd see at the mall or
defendant's,
something?
explicit admission
That's
to
awful.
committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore,
Y'all forgive me, I'm
with
just that
respect to
one that
count one burglary
has to make
felony, how do you plead, Mr.
ridiculous
Kohberger,
comments
guilty or
in
not
times like
guilty?
this.
Guilty.
As to
Jenny!
count two,
I love
murder in
you.
the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogan, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count three, as it relates to murder in the first degree for
This
the
might
murder
make
of
me
Kaylee
cry for
Gonzalez,
those
how do you
parents,
plead,
those
guilty or not
families.
guilty?
Oh my God.
Guilty.
As to count four, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count five, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The court will
Dude,
find
he
that
makes
the
me sick.
defendant
This little
understands the
bastard says
nature
it like
of the
it's just
charges
nothing.
and
Yep, I did
the
it.
defense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. Court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea and that finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it
The
was
judge
mentioned on
just
the call
accepted
Monday
it.
afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
Wow.
The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed, given the evidence that is available. We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to make statements to the court at sentencing.
Absolutely. And
Jenny, it was very
certainly
last minute. It's okay.
both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than one full day for sentencing?
I do
Wow.
not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously, we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in one day.
When that's good, that'll be the day
Defense,
y'all
agree
see me
with that,
cry.
in terms of the time frame?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August. The week of July 22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties or the next week, the week of August 4 is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the court wants to schedule it.
The state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. We've told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd. And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public and the logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th. We'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, sir.
All right.
I hope his ass comes in
Any reason why I
Full
should not rescind the
jail
non-discrimination order?
attire for this.
You're right. I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions. That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
We'd have no objection for the order to remain in place through
All right,
sentencing.
I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be withdrawn in order to give the parties the space and time to prepare to meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary decision at this point. We can always revisit.
So the
it if it
families are
seems
still under
to
gag
be,
until this is over, is what I'm
For
understanding.
some reason, I should. That said, obviously, I don't think the defendant, that a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea and no longer the presumption of innocence. And in fact, now the actual conviction for the crimes. He
Oh,
will
good. He'll be
continue
in
to
jail
held,
attire, little bastard.
jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else today?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
I assume that the trial date will be vacated
trial
and those
is-
4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So
Thank you, Your Honor.
that said,
Ryan will
again,
be
if you
here.
would all please wait.
So make sure you
for,
come back so we
the
can tell you
parties
happy
and the
birthday.
victims, families, and others to leave the courtroom before you do. I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned. All right, please.
Have it, Bryan Kohberger pleading guilty, and that plea deal accepted by Judge Hippler. They're guilty on all 5 counts, 10 years fixed for burglary, and then, of course, life fixed, consecutive sentences, life in prison on 4 first-degree murder charges.
And the judge asked Kohberger each count, talked about each victim, named them, asked him if he was guilty of killing them. Take a listen.
So as to count 1 burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count 2, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died. As to count 3, the state would have had to have proven
Unbelievable.
that on that same date in
What do y'all
Latah
think?
County, at that same address, you did
I'll be a blubbering
willfully,
mess,
unlawfully,
I'm sure,
deliberately, with
when
premeditation
we
and
come
malice
back.
aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez,
Bye,
a
Regina.
human
Love
being,
you.
by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count 4, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with
Well, that's good. I
premeditation
agree.
and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count 5, also murder in the first degree, that on or
Donna,
about
we
November
definitely will.
13th,
The babies were just down here
2022,
like, are you done
22,
yet? Are
pardon
you
me, in
done?
Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately,
I'm sorry again if
with
y'all can hear them.
premeditation
They're
and malice
loud
aforethought,
and excited.
kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty,
Wow.
the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
There you have it. Bryan Kohberger again admitting verbally in court that he killed Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle.
And our Andrea Dearden is live at the Ada County Courthouse. They are filing out of the courtroom right now. Family first.
I want to
then, of
see
course,
the
media
families, and then
any
I'll probably
witnesses.
jump off here
And
after.
Andrea, we may just hear from some
that's
of those
over.
family members, or can we? Because the judge is keeping the gag order in place through sentencing, which we know is now scheduled for July 23rd.
Wow.
He is, but we did just see Kayla Gonsalves's father come in just now. We've talked about how he did not choose to be inside the courtroom. In fact, he walked out of the courtroom earlier
Yes, Steve
today, as we
chose
talked
not
about
to be
before
there.
the hearing. Here, he's meeting other family
Love you,
members as they
Jenny.
come out following the hearing. So we will see if anyone is willing to give a statement. Of course, obviously they
I think that
have
was Olivia right
issued
there.
statements on social media and offered their family's thoughts. Of course, you heard the Gonsalves family say they are outraged. They
There's
do not
Kaylee's
believe
mom.
justice was served in this case. It does not appear that they are going to come and address media directly
No,
here.
that's not
So
Olivia.
we do have an area set up here for families to speak if they would like to.
You guys, I will definitely be
We will wait
back.
for the other folks to come out of the courtroom.
If not
This was
before,
their
definitely on the
opportunity. You heard the
23rd
hearing
to
there. The
do
Bryan
this with
Kohberger
y'all.
pleading guilty to all counts, going
We'll see
through
it all
each
the way
one of those. And
through.
at the very end, the prosecutor getting a little emotional as he read the names of those victims. Certainly a testament to just how heavy this is weighing on everyone involved.
And Andrea, as we wait for family members to come out and possibly comment, let's go right to the beginning of this hearing where the judge started out asking for no outbursts in the courtroom. And I think the courtroom was very well behaved. There were no outbursts in the courtroom. And then he talked about something interesting that I wanted to talk to you about. He said there were calls to contact him and try and sway his decision about this plea. He says he has been dealing with that. It's been very
People are crazy. Why would you even try to contact a judge?
what's going on there. Tell us what you know about
That's
that.
insane.
I know he did talk
Logan's
about
coming.
that
Hang on.
in the court to talk about, the calls and essentially the pleas to him in order to to change his opinion or to sway his opinion is how he put it. And he said that, he wanted people to understand that he has very limited discretion here. So it is his job, just as we talked about prior to the hearing, it's his job to make sure that the defendant is entering this plea agreement willingly, that he understands the terms, and that he is saying and he is admitting that he committed these crimes and that he is not pleading guilty because of any coercion or because of any threats that he might have gotten. And also to recognize that while this is, we talked about a binding agreement or a non-binding agreement, he is not bound by this sentence. So that means that the judge will go into the sentencing. He will take in all of the information into account, and then he will determine that sentence. We expect him to follow the plea agreement, those life sentences, consecutive life sentences. Also, he will issue restitution, fees, things like that. But what this means, though, is that that's the only discretion he has. So he wanted to make it clear. He wanted to put it on the record that no matter what anyone says when they call, in fact, he said he didn't listen to the messages. He passed on any
These
type
poor
of
families.
threat
Can you
or any
imagine all that
kind
media
of,
chasing you after you
problematic
just heard
message. He
the
said he
person
passed
that
those on to law
murdered your
enforcement.
children?
But otherwise, he did not take into consideration
And now they're being
any of those
chased.
comments
Leave
that
them
were
alone.
sent here either by phone or by email, because he said that's not his job. His job, his duty, his responsibility is to the court and to make sure that the legal process is followed as is required. But his own opinion or the opinions of those who have tried to sway that opinion, he said, simply don't play a role here. They don't have a place in this process.
Andrea, can I ask you about the demeanor of Bryan Kohberger? This is a man who is admitting to 4 grisly murders. You said everyone was really affected by this. He didn't seem to be affected at all, though, by it.
No, we didn't.
I can only see what I saw, what you're seeing. I'm paying attention to his body language, paying attention to his voice. I would agree that he seemed calm.
He seemed
spoke
cool as a
clearly.
cucumber
He spoke
to me.
loudly enough. It wasn't a meek or mild response to the judge when asked. In the very beginning, he stood to address the court, as you do, out of respect for the judge. The Judge Hippler saying you don't have to stand. You can sit while we have this conversation. But yes, I agree that I thought that he seemed calm. I thought that he seemed composed and essentially pretty comfortable in that space, answering those questions as they were asked by the judge. And of course, we all know that those are significant. And of course, also in there, laying out some of the evidence. Most of the evidence that they talked about in the court today was those were pieces of information that we have known as we followed this story. So I don't think there was anything that was super surprising or super, that caught us off guard, but it's still difficult to sit there and listen to it. Surely the family, victims' families can't be easy to hear that. And I wonder if that gives them any solace in having that laid out in the courtroom of exactly what he did. Of course, that not coming from Kohberger himself, but from the prosecutor in this case, detailing the pieces of evidence and the pieces of information that they planned, at least some of those that they planned to present at trial. And we've heard, especially from the Gonzalez family, saying they want there to be full accountability and they want to know exactly what happened, and they want that absolutely, shared in court. And I believe they want to hear that from Kohberger himself. That didn't happen. Now, we do know that sentencing will come up on July 23rd, and the defense team and the defendant himself will have the opportunity. He has a right to address the court, but to be clear, he is not obligated to say anything at all. And so whether
I
or
doubt
not he
he'll
will have
even
a
address
statement
it.
prepared, that will remain to be seen, and we'll have to wait to see what happens during the
Y'all
sentencing
think he'll
hearing,
address the
July
court?
23rd.
What's going to be especially emotional and impactful on that day, as the judge mentioned, is that every family member that wants to, who has been impacted by this case, will have a chance to speak. Now, it looks like there aren't a lot of family members coming out right now that want to share at this time. That could be because the gag order is still in place until the sentencing, which is July 23rd, as Andrea mentioned. It doesn't look like anyone's coming up to the microphones to speak, but it's going to be very powerful, very emotional. We're going to hear from probably just about everyone involved in this case. Coming up on July 23rd, they'll have time to get those victim impact statements put together. And as Andrea mentioned,
Well, that's
Bryan
good. I agree.
Kohberger
I
has
think
a
he
chance
will.
to speak as well. We'll
I
see
don't
if
think
he
he'll say
takes that
anything.
opportunity or not.
Again, that will
But then
be
he's sick,
July
and I think he
23rd will
might
be the next
do
step
it
in all this.
as like
And the point of this
his
hearing,
trophy. Like,
as
yeah,
we
I
talked
did
about,
that.
as
He's
Andre
proud of
certainly
it.
talked
Seems
about,
like
was for the judge to make sure that Bryan Kohberger understood that
sick.
this plea deal, that he was pleading
I don't
guilty
think he
to
will, but I'm
these
glad
grisly
they're giving the
murders,
family an
that this
opportunity
plea
to
was being
speak.
given
Brittany,
freely,
me too.
voluntarily, and without
Steve, I guarantee
coercion.
will
And
have a
again,
lot to
he
say when this
confirmed all
gag
that.
order
The
comes out.
only words that he said in court today were yes, no, and guilty a number of times as he was answering the judge's questions. And Judge Hippler there decided that, yes, Kohberger understood the charges against him, what he was agreeing to. And so now he is guilty and facing those
Yeah,
consecutive
and his
life
knuckles were
sentences.
all swollen
Yes.
up
All
and
right,
stuff
Andrea,
when that's
thank you so
doing.
much
He's
for your
sick.
input, for your coverage today. We have a lot more coming up throughout the day here on Channel 7. But once again, this is over. Bryan Kohberger has pleaded guilty to killing those 4 University of Idaho college students. He says is
Y'all,
the
every time I
one
hear
who
that, I
did it.
get like
We
full
have more
body
on our
chills.
website right now, ktvb.com. You can watch what you missed on KTVB Plus. You can also, it looks like we might have some people coming out that might want to speak. So I think we're going to continue our coverage. Maybe it just took them a while to come on out and make that decision.
There are some people congregating there. We'll wait to see if we can hear from them. As you said, as the judge said, the gag order is in place until sentencing on July 23rd. Looks like we have not seen all of the family members yet. We saw Steve Gonzalez at the front of the courtroom and then walking away from the courtroom. He was not inside at the time, had done sort of a protest by not going inside. He was not happy with this plea deal, though, according to the judge and the prosecutor, will be given an opportunity to give a statement during sentencing.
The family obviously very furious, the Gonzalez family. We did hear from Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee Gonzalez's dad, before the hearing. Let's go ahead and let you listen in on what he had to say.
Surviving victims and make this person say that they had nothing to do with it. He did it solely, he did it all on his own, and nobody else was responsible. And then we won't keep having this. These
I don't know
supporters
who that guy
always
is. Is
saying
he a
that
brother,
he got set
maybe?
up. We know what he's
Kaylee's
planning on
brother,
doing. Somebody
possibly?
died,
I thought she only had the
died.
sister, but I could be
He's gonna
wrong.
try to say that, put the blame on that person. So he's not going to take accountability.
All right, so there's that soundbite there. He was not in the courtroom for the plea agreement. He did join his wife, Christy Gonzalez, afterward there on the steps of the courthouse, and then they left, and with no comment, as far as we know. He could have spoken to some photographers on the way out. We're not quite sure yet, but we are waiting. There's a little stand there with a bunch of microphones from different networks and organizations here of the media who would like to hear from some people involved
Oh, that's Hunter.
in the case,
Vanessa
if they
Boo?
so choose. We'll see.
Isn't
if
it
they do come
Hunter
out.
that Olivia was
Now,
with?
again, let's go back to this plea deal and
Ethan's brother, right?
what was agreed to, what Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to today. Again, 5 counts, 10 years fixed for burglary, but also consecutive, not concurrent, those would be served at the same time, consecutive life sentences, 4 life sentences
Haley's.
each
Oh, okay.
for first-degree murder. He cannot appeal, cannot ask for a different sentence as well. And lawyers said that they gave Kohberger all the information he needed to agree to this plea deal. Again, we heard from him numerous times during that hearing that he understood it, that he agreed to it. While he did not show emotion, Judge Hippler believed that he absolutely understands what he is agreeing to.
I
and
want
the
to see his
seriousness of
face
this
when
sentence
he
and these crimes.
The judge asked him
listens
over
to
and over
these
again,
families
over and
read
over
their
again,
impact
gave him
statements.
the opportunity to say he did not commit these crimes, that he does not want to take this plea deal. He did not do that. I do want to mention as well, there was a lot
Victoria!
of
Hey,
talk about
girl.
why this hearing happened so quickly. Many family members were
I've missed
concerned.
you.
They didn't have enough time to get to Boise to be here for this hearing if they were living out of state or if they were further away. Well, the judge kind of explained that, and I thought that was necessary. He apologized to the family, said, you know, I just found out about this on Monday. So the judge just found out about the plea agreement on Monday of this week, the same day we all did. That's when the judge found out about it. He said, then they met, they talked about it, and he realized they had to get moving on this hearing right away because I guess they're going to call, or they were going to call, 10,000 prospective jurors for this trial. And that process was already in motion.
10,000?
So they
Good
had
Lord.
to fix that and put a hold on that as soon as possible if this trial was not going to happen. And as you just saw, the trial has been canceled. There will
That's
be
a
no
lot of
trial,
people. Jesus.
no death penalty. Bryan Kohberger will spend the rest of his life in prison.
Judge Hippler talked about the fact
Can you imagine
that they
going from
pretty much
10,000 to
cleared the
what,
schedule,
12
cleared the docket
jurors?
for any and
That's a
all other
lot.
trials that could happen that week, that they were going to go through that whole process. Instead, they're going to use the courtroom instead for the sentencing coming up again, July 23rd, starting in the morning. I'd like to ask Andrea Dearden another question here. We talked about sort of the sentences attached to each of these crimes, these charges, you know, fixed 10 years for burglary and then fixed consecutive life sentences for those first-degree murders. But clear up, the judge doesn't necessarily have to agree to that. Is that correct, Andre?
Hey, Don.
Correct. What he said was he wanted to make it clear that he is not bound by this agreement. And what that means is that he is not obligated by law to follow it. However, he also said as part of the agreement, it's called a non-binding agreement. So think of it legally as such kind of a suggestion, knowing that both prosecutors and defense attorneys are presenting to the court that they have come to this together, that they both agree that this is what should happen and they are expecting to happen at that sentencing. He did make it clear that they cannot argue against this sentence, meaning that they cannot argue in favor of a lower sentence. So we would expect him to issue those life sentences, again, consecutive. That means one after the other. So these are not concurrent. The judge would have the choice to do that, concurrent or consecutive. He said those will be consecutive. But what the judge will
What is a life
also be
sentence?
able
Like
to
30
do
years,
is
right?
talk
So
about
he's looking at
restitution.
like
Money that would be
120,
expected to be paid
130
by
years.
Kohberger. Both there will be two
Don't
options.
quote
There
me,
will
but
be
I think it's 30
restitution
years,
to
right?
victims, but there's also a civil claim. So he said that up to $5,000
Better late
per
than
family
never.
that would be paid in civil damages by the defendant to those families. So those are some of the specifics that have not yet been decided that we would expect to see handed down during that sentencing hearing in just a few weeks. And so as you talked about that scheduling and giving the opportunity for those families to get here, he wants
Let
to
me
make sure
Google
that
it.
everyone that is impacted directly by this crime, by law, they have the right to address the court and to be in the courtroom and to address the defendant directly. So today, the Gonzalez family, Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee's father,
25
decided not
years
to go
is
into
what
the
Google
courtroom. So we'll
says.
see if he's here, and what that statement will be, of course, during that sentencing hearing. We expect it to last
So he's
much
looking
of the
at
day. They talked about probably not
110
needing
years
more than a
in
day,
prison.
but
He'll
we
live
would expect to
in prison
see
the rest of his life.
lots of testimony. And then the defense also has the
10
opportunity
for
to
the
address the court.
burglary,
In a
and
lot of cases, the defense does not
according
issue
to
any
Google,
kind
25
of argument, don't present anything during that sentencing
25
phase, and the
years
defendant himself
is a life
may
sentence
or may not speak. It is
times
a very
4.
common practice for the defendant not to say
I love you
anything
too,
during the
Dawn.
sentencing hearing.
I miss you guys.
Also important to note that this will be the opportunity for people to hear for the first time because of that gag order. This will be the first time that we will hear from a lot of these families, from their own words as they sit on that witness stand and share their testimony. So it will certainly be a very compelling day in court, without a doubt.
It will be a very emotional day, Andrea. Let's talk about the gag order. The judge did decide that he wanted to keep that in place through sentencing, which, as you mentioned, July 23rd, 9 a.m. there at the Ada County Courthouse. What does the gag order mean? Who does it wrap around, and who is impacted by it? Who can and who can't speak? Because, as you mentioned, families speak quite a bit on social media, or they'll send us a statement. So who does this impact?
Life without parole, Dawn, from what I understand. The sentencing will be on July 23rd.
Records will stay sealed,
and that's when the families can read their impact statement.
Requests, media often, we have a right to know. The public has a
I
right
believe
to
it's
know
without
and has a
parole,
right to
so he
documents
cannot ever
unless they are sealed by the
try
court.
to fight it.
Those are only temporary seals, meaning that they believe that it is too much of a risk to allow those documents to be disseminated, to be shared publicly because of the impact that they may have on a potential trial. Given that this is such a high-profile case, they are going to wait until after sentencing. The judge saying today that he is going to hold that dissemination order in place until after that sentencing hearing. And at that point, we should be able to get all of the documents related to this case that are a matter of public record. And so the Judge Hippler, saying that today that he expected those requests to be voluminous. He knows that a lot of people will be putting in requests for all of that information. Now, in terms of what people can share, non-dissemination means you can't share
They said on the
information
23rd that he'll show up in his jail clothing now,
mean
since
you
he's
can't
admitted
have
to
your
this.
own opinions and you can't have reactions to things.
He'll
That
be
is
in
not what
jail
the law
clothing and not
protects.
civilian clothes
So
anymore.
in this case, it means they can't share evidence, they can't share documents, they can't share video related to the case, but they would be able to speak about their opinion. Now, whether or not they feel comfortable doing that, that's up to them. That's up to their own discretion.
Andrea, thank you for that clarification. So we are staying live right now in case there are some families who come out of the courtroom and want to share their opinions. Again, not evidence, anything like that, but just opinions, reaction to what they heard and what they saw today in court. We'll stick around. Perchance that might happen again. Steve Gonzalez has already walked away from the courtroom. He will not be sharing any more this morning.
We will see, though, if he'll provide a victim impact statement where he could speak directly to Bryan Kohberger. That may be something that he wants to do. So we'll see if he does that on sentencing day, July 23rd.
Dawn. The judge said they'll take it away after
for the last few
the
days,
sentencing.
talking to people there in the community, getting their opinions
I'm
about how
going
they feel about the.
Pause this. I'm going to end it right there. I'm going to try to come back tonight. Y'all don't hold me to it, so we can go over the rest of that and see what is said, but that was it. That's crazy. The judge accepted his plea of guilty on all counts, and the sentencing is on the 23rd, so we'll be back. If not before, we will be back that day. As long as we don't have cheerleading going on, which hopefully, I think that's like midweek. What day is that? The 23rd is on a Wednesday. We should hopefully be able to come back. Wild times, yeah. My girls, the younger two will have practice, but that's not till later in the evening, so we should be okay to come back. No. Chloe will have practice, which means I'll have to pull this up and let it run while I run and drop her off and pick her up, but it'll be okay. Maybe I'll see if her friend can bring her home that day. But let me get off of here. I hate to cut it short, but my mother is out there with 3 of the kids in the pool, so I better go rescue her. And hopefully I'll come back tonight, depending on how the kids are, and we could talk more about it and see what everybody thinks. And then we should hopefully have answers with the Diddy stuff too, and we could talk about that too if y'all want. Because I'm still waiting on answers on what they're going to do with that. If they're going to let him loose, or if they're going to keep him. But thank y'all for hanging out with me. It's been a while, so I'm glad some of you showed up. It's been a long time. Eventually my life will slow down. I don't know when, but we'll see. I love y'all, and I will see y'all later. Oh, Dawn, thank you. I run on coffee over here. I love you. Ryan, I will see you on your birthday. If you get to make it. If not, I understand you're going to be busy in Columbus. Car or something, I guess, driving by. But let me go save my mom. She's got all 3 of my youngest kids in the pool. So I'll go help her, and I will see y'all later. Love ya!